From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Hey folks, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Superpower School podcast. I'm Paddy Danda, your host. And in today's episode, I have a guest who is really focusing on giving and this whole notion of giving. And so I'm really excited to know more about it. But he's the founder of Givers University, and he's the author of a book called Give to Be Great. So I'd like to welcome EA Csolkovits to the show. And by the way, EA, did I pronounce your surname okay there?
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, I'm really excited to know more about you and your background. I'd like to take you right back, actually, to some of your early years. And I was just reading up on your profile and your background, and you became a millionaire at quite a young age. So would you like to share more about your early days?
Sure. And be happy to. And thank you for asking. I live in Michigan now, Michigan, United States, and originally born in the Chicagoland area. And I was the son of a milkman. So back then, there was men that, then they're pretty much men from what I saw, because you had to be in order to carry all that ice. But my father was a milkman, and they'd get up at 3 a.m. and go, and back then milk was in glass jugs, glass gallons. And the only trucks that were refrigerated were the big 18-wheelers. So all the delivery trucks, like my father had his own delivery truck, they had to go chop their own ice. So you get up at 3 a.m. and go at these 6-foot slabs of ice with an ice pick and chop them down and put that on the milk. And that's how I kept the milk cold all day while I was delivering it. So, very manual to say the least, and a humble upbringing. My father, one-man operation, one truck, one guy. And here I am at 5 years old, helping him on the route whenever I could. And I enjoyed it, and, being with my father and working that kind of thing. But the point I want to make is it was nothing unusual about my background. It was very humble and a regular, ordinary, average kind of thing. And then at the ripe old age of 16, Paddy, I took my first step into becoming prosperous, and I became a janitor. And I didn't mind being a janitor because business was always picking up. So here I was, ripe old age of 16. And you think as a janitor, that's a sort of a lowly profession. And I had 2 extraordinary events happen to me while I was a janitor. One, at 16, I was able to be bonded, which means insured, so that if my buffer, when I was cleaning a place, if my buffer hit some piece of equipment, insurance company would pay for it, right? So I was able, and that allowed me to be in places that had expensive equipment. It allowed me to be in very expensive homes. And one of the homes I cleaned of a lady, her name won't mean anything until I make the movie reference. Then those that have seen the movie will know who I'm talking about. I cleaned this lady's house every Wednesday. Her name was June Martino. And I lived in that area. I lived in this area, the greater Oak Brook area. And there was a movie out a couple of years ago. It's still available on streaming and probably will be for some time because it's actually a pretty good view. The name of the movie is called The Founder. It's about McDonald's, and Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc. Did you catch it by any chance?
I know it well, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
All right. In the movie, I witnessed the whole phenomenon in my lifetime. The first franchise, what he called McDonald's number 1, drove by it probably 100 times because it was on the end of our milk route with my father. So I witnessed the whole phenomenon. Lived right there in Oak Brook, right? During the movie, Michael Keaton playing Ray Kroc. And by the way, Ray wasn't that way. That's all Hollywood spin. At the beginning, it says this is based on a true story. And that's true. It's based on a true story, but it's not the true story. It's based on it, right? And so there's a lot of Hollywood spin, and they painted Ray away. He really wasn't that way at all. But nonetheless, there are certain events that are nodded to that are correct. And so through the movie, Michael Keaton, Ray Kroc, is talking to this lady outside his office. He says, June this, June that. That's June Martino. That lady is the lady whose house I cleaned every Wednesday. And what was interesting was that when I met her, she already had the 3rd most controlling stock in McDonald's. And later on, by the way, after I had met her, she was, interestingly enough, the very first woman to ever trade on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And she was an amazing lady. And a story I usually don't get the opportunity to share, but I'll share just a miniaturized version. She was so nice and so approachable. And I was in her house every Wednesday. She had a full-time maid and butler, and I was there to clean the pool and the garage and some of the heavier stuff. And so one day I went up to June, and I just, because she was always so nice and friendly, and I asked her about McDonald's, and she put her arm around me, brought me in the kitchen, and the entire day, Paddy, I'm a 16-year-old kid, told me the entire story from where the movie begins, which was so weird when I saw the movie, that, where he was a milkshake salesman, basically a mixer salesman for Prince Castle, and how she had worked for him then, and then all the way how he met the brothers and all the way through. And what was interesting was that during the movie, there's a time where June goes to Ray Kroc, Michael Keaton, and says, we're out of money. We don't have any money. That causes him to call the brothers, and they have an argument on the phone. He needs more percentage. They need more, et cetera. It's a drama scene. But anyway, she tells me about that happening. And she said that Ray couldn't afford to pay her. So he paid her in worthless company stock, worth less than zero, by the way, because they had no money. It was under, it was zero and under.
Wow.
And they owed more than they had. And he agreed to take the calls from bill collectors in case they called her and wanted money from her on a personal accounts, that kind of thing. So I asked her, I said, June, I'm a janitor. I work Friday to Friday. If I don't get paid on Friday, I'm not showing on Saturday. I need that paycheck. I live paycheck to paycheck. Why did you do it? And Paddy, she sat back in her chair and stared at me. And it was only for like 10 seconds, but it seemed like 30 minutes because she's staring right at me. And I know she's not home. She just left. And this snot-nosed 16 years old, yours truly, just asked her a question no one ever asked her before. Everyone wanted to know what happened with McDonald's, but no one wanted to know why. And I just say, why did you do it? Why did you work for nothing? I wouldn't have done that. Why'd you do it? And when she spoke, I made the hair stand up on the back of my neck because the way she said it. So when I asked her, why did you do it? After the pause, and she thought, her answer was, because I believed in Ray. And I thought, man, I remember my first thought, Paddy, was that's it. I need to find a Ray Kroc. That's it. That's my answer. I don't even know what questions I need to ask. I'm the son of a milkman, already burnt out janitor. And I don't know what questions I should be asking, let alone, how to become successful. And where would I find my Ray Kroc? I need a Ray Kroc. Certainly didn't work out bad for her. I'm cleaning her. It was $1 million home back then when I was 16 years old. So, I'm thinking, I need to find one of these. I need to find this. And it wasn't 2 or 3 months later, we got a phone call at the office for a gentleman that was opening a diamond store in the Chicago area. They needed to see some carpeting. My boss sent me, and that man offered me a job. That man also became my Ray Kroc. And he was an amazing gentleman. And just to share with you, he became the father I never had, even though I had a father. And I became the son he never had, even though he had a son. And we were truly that close. And he shared with me a very interesting story I'd like to share with your listeners. For those that think the deck is really stacked against you, listen to this story. Here he was, my mentor, telling me about what it was like to grow up in the United States. There was an event called the Great Depression, right? And what it was like to grow up in this Great Depression. And he said, no one had any money. No one had any. He said people were jumping off of buildings, committing suicide because they lost their fortunes, multi-mile long soup kitchen lines just to get a bowl of soup, multi-mile long. He said, no one had money. He said, for some of our meals, we even ate cardboard.
Wow.
That's tough, right? And he said one day he was walking and he sort of just get out. And he went by this store and he'd been going by it every day and always saw the same guy standing in the back. So he just went in one day just to talk. No one had money. No one was hiring. It wasn't working. So as he talked with the gentleman, he was in a store and it was full of sewing machines. And it turned out this man was the owner of the store. And he said, yeah, I don't have any customers because no one has any money. They're trying to put food on their table. They're not going to buy a sewing machine, that's for sure. And so my mentor had this flash in his mind. And he said, how about if I help you sell some of these? And I said, I'm open. What do you have in mind? He said, right now they're all paid for and they're collecting dust. He said, no one comes in the store. I can't even afford employees. It's just me, right? He said, well, this is what I think we should do. He said, let's sell them on payments instead of having people buy the whole thing. And he said, we'll split the payments and I'll guarantee the sewing machine if someone walks on it. And he said, so you'll never be out any money. The guy says, man, go for it. These things are just collecting dust. Do it. So the next thing my mentor did was he put together a flyer and posted it everywhere. And the flyer said, women to work from home. He said he couldn't keep up with the response because everyone needed money. No one was hiring. The fact that everyone was hiring in any way was extraordinary. So he put together a way where he built together this massive community of women to work from home. He sold them the sewing machines on payments, gave them the patterns to sew with, gave them the material to sew, and guaranteed he would buy the clothing from them, thus guaranteeing their income so that they could make the payments on the sewing machine and have a reasonable wage and a good wage left over. So there was this huge community built of all of these women. Then he bought this clothing from the women and then sold it to clothing stores and department stores as handmade, high quality, deeply discounted clothing for people that needed to buy clothing that didn't have a lot of money, but still wanted good value. So in 1 year's time, Paddy, while people are jumping off of buildings, multi-mile long soup kitchen lines, he earned $1 million. So on that story I share with your listeners, if you think business is tough, what's your excuse? And my mentor shared with me, he said, what I really did, because the story was astonishing to me. I mean, this was just, wow, this is incredible, right? And he said, the thing that was interesting was he said, it was an idea. And he said, I can share with you as you go through life, you will never have money problems. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, you won't. He said, you'll have idea problems, but you won't have money problems. And he taught me the distinction between those two. Every business, every solution starts with an idea. And it starts with asking ourselves the right questions. Inadvertently, Paddy, I stumbled across the right question when I said, where would I find my right rock? Where would I? We ask the right questions, we get the right answers. Most people go through life asking the wrong questions. So guess what? They get the wrong answers. Yeah. And not only that, then they're surprised they got the wrong answer when that's what they were asking all along, right? And so he taught me the power. He said, don't worry about the answers in life. The answers are always there. They're omnipresent. He said, learn how to ask the right questions. And he said, our lives become self-fulfilling prophecies. All the answers that we ask will always appear and they will be there. He said, people go through their lives asking the wrong questions. That's why they keep getting the wrong answer. And he shared with me these nuggets, if you will. At 19 years old, I finally asked him, I said, Sam, his name was Sam Robbins. I said, Sam, will you teach me everything? I mean, all of it. Just don't hold back. I want to learn it all. He said, okay, I will, but I want one thing from you. He said, when the time is right, and you will know that time, I want you to teach as many people as you possibly can everything that I taught you. So that has, in fact, that vow and that oath I made to my mentor at 19 years old has manifested itself into Givers University. And through the courses of those things I learned from him, under his tutelage, under his mentorship, I was blessed. I became a millionaire at 23 years old. The first year I earned $1 million in 1 year in salary. After I paid all of my taxes, I had $1 million left in my pocket that year. I was 33 years old. It was 1989, right? So I can share with you that I didn't do all those things. I love your show because it's named Superpowers, and I can share with your listeners, I only had one superpower. It was simple. I had the ability to say, I don't know about that. Could you teach me about that, please? I'd love to learn. See, where everyone else is so interested in being preeminent and being the smartest person in the room. And I'm from the school, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to be learning. So my only superpower, Paddy, was the ability through my learning from my mentor, which is why I'm such an advocate for mentoring. For your listeners, if you have a business, if you're a freelancer and you don't have a mentor, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a mentor, in my world, Paddy, we call that naive. You are opening yourself up to make so many mistakes, and just out of nothing more than ego, because the person doesn't have the ability to say, I don't know about that. Could you teach me? Because everyone wants to look so smart today. That's not where the power is. The power is in the ability to say, I don't know about that. I'd love to learn. Could you teach me about that? And that was the only superpower I had. And the blessings I had through my life were as a direct result of my keeping attached to being son of a milkman, burnt out janitor.
Wow. Honestly, I was listening to you there very patiently. I just wanted to hear those words because I think a number of those stories really resonate with me. My mother, she came to England as an immigrant way back in the 60s, and she ended up becoming a sewing machinist. So your story about a sewing machinist was particularly, it struck a chord with me because I grew up with that sewing machine in the house and her working all hours.
It's nothing.
Even till, the early hours of the morning, she would have to sew. And whilst a lot of school kids would be, in bed sleeping, I'd be there trying to drain out the noise of that sewing machine going off in the background. But she had to do it. That was the way she paid the bills. And I think your whole message around finding a mentor, that's amazing, because I too strongly believe when you find those characters in your life, those people that are willing to give, right? They're willing to pass on their knowledge, then we should embrace it with both hands. Now, not everybody's like that, right? So that's the other thing. I think I've sometimes longed for someone like Ray, someone who's going to give me their words of wisdom, but they're so hard to find. But when you do, absolutely grab them with both hands. So my next question was really about if somebody out there is thinking about finding a mentor, and as you mentioned, it's so important, how do you go about that? Like, where do you start?
It's a great question. Well, one of the things we teach at Givers University really is we teach, if I put it down, shifted it to one word, the word would be discernment. And we teach a skill that simply is not being taught anywhere else today. I've done close to 160 interviews since last April on podcasts. And not one time has anyone said, I know someone else teaching that. Not even the concept of it. Here's the skill we teach. First of all, I say to your listeners, we love everybody. I say it again emphatically. We love everybody. And we teach a skill, and the skill is as follows. We teach people how to separate the person who we love from their deeds, which we may not love. And by separating them, we now begin to become more discerning by not listening necessarily to the words, but observing their deeds. And we teach people an observation skill, how to be observant, how to discern in your relationships, so that when you see people doing specific things, you now can discern and decide, maybe I should bring them closer into my life because they're doing the things that they should be doing. Or when I see them doing other things they shouldn't be doing, maybe I should begin respectfully, not rude or nasty, respectfully distance myself from them. Because if I bring them in closer, they're going to make me collateral damage. And I'm going to be stomping out fires, not of my making. My stress level is going to go up, not of my making. And it's easier to not have that person in my life, or at least be respectfully distanced from them. So we teach the skill. We even have checklists where we've literally, Paddy, sifted it down into an actual checklist. One of them, one of my favorite ones, it's called the 25 do's. These are the 25 things, the deeds you will watch people do, the 25 that givers do, and the 25 that takers do. And you literally can go down a checklist at the bottom, total it, and you know exactly right there. So when we say giver, we're not labeling a person. When we say taker, we're not labeling a person. We're labeling the deeds of that person. And there's a very important distinction there, because we love everybody, but we teach people there are certain people you want to have in your life. So here's the question. An interview I did a number of back, the gentleman said, wow, this is really great stuff. In fact, you know what? I just read this book, and this book said I need to have 5 good people around me. I said, you're right. You do. One question. Which 5? And all of a sudden he stared at me with this blank look. I said, do you see my point? No one's teaching Which 5? How do you discern which of those you should have? As you said so astutely, Paddy, was to have, how do you discern who's going to be your mentor? What are the things you look for? And it's not their words. Because as we say at Givers University, your talk talks and your walk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. In other words, we teach, by the way, I practiced that right before I said it. Anyway, we teach people, hear, discern, and watch their deeds, and you will see the real person. You'll see, do you want them into your life or not? I just talked with a gentleman that is forming a community. We're helping him do that. And, he said, I've never seen before an actual template of how to do something step by step. He said, he said, you've already helped me where I was going to go down path Y and I really needed to go down path X. He said, this is so excellent and I shared with him, I said, I didn't make up any of this stuff. None of it. I was just a conduit. Part of it was because my mentor taught me I can do it. What? Anyway, so here we are as this incredible opportunity that are out there with us today. And, we're sharing with people and teaching people the difference between givers communities and takers communities, because there is a difference.
And on that point, actually, it sounds like to me from what you're saying is be selective about who you bring into your life as that mentor, rather than just going with somebody who agrees to be your mentor. Because I think for many of us, we feel quite humbled if somebody says, hey, I'll be your mentor. I'd go, yeah, great, without perhaps really thinking that through and thinking, well, hang on, is this the right person for me? Do they exemplify all of the things that I want to learn? So would that be a correct statement? To be more selective about the people you bring and those 5 people?
That's what discernment is. You're exactly right. You said it right. You nailed it right there. You were Robin Hood. You split the arrow with the arrow. So and that's what discernment is all about. And it's not being taught today, Yeah. You're right. In fact, I love the example you just used there. We're humbled when someone says, yeah, I'll help teach you. But what if they're going to teach you the wrong way? It's just like, the cliches are cliches because they're usually true, but not always. They're not always true. One of them that I take issue with is practice makes perfect. Practice does not make perfect. It never made perfect. Practice makes perfect. Just because you did something a lot of times, you could have done it wrong a lot of times. And you may be continuing to do it wrong a lot of times, right? When I was becoming right in the midst of becoming a commercial pilot in years past, after I got my private ticket and I was going into more advanced, I've got a better instructor because it was more advanced ratings I was going for, my instrument rating and multi-engine complex ratings. And after he was with me with one landing, he goes, what did you just do? And I said, what do you mean? I landed my plane. He said, that's a landing? He said, you're beating the baloney out of all of your passengers. He said, and I said, well, my instructor taught me that any landing you can walk away from is a good one. He said, I have to tell you, he said, you are pushing the envelope on that one. He said, wait, why are you landing that way? I said, well, that's the way I was taught. And everyone said it was okay. He said, well, you're doing it wrong. He said, let me teach you the proper way. He said, I can teach you how to every single time when you bring that plane in, you'll feel the wheels, you'll feel the weight transfer from the wings onto the wheels. And the wheels will start to do like a little tweak that they do when they start to spin up and spool up. And he said, your passengers won't even know you landed. I said, man, I want to learn that. See? So the point was, I was doing something over and over again. I thought it was okay.
I was going to say, I must have been in a plane with some of those pilots because I certainly have had some bumpy landings in the past as well. So maybe they need this other mentor in their lives for sure.
Yeah, we call it the brick 3 approach. It comes down like a brick. So with those experiences, discernment is so important. And with our discernment of selecting a mentor, you want to have, number 1, a mentor that's done it, not a wannabe. I mean, there's so many people say, I can teach you and I can coach you and they've never done it themselves. All you're really going to be doing is paying for their education, whether you know it or not. That's what you're doing. You want a mentor that's done it, someone who can show, this is what I've done. Because in order for them to be able to say exactly what they have accomplished and done, along with that are all the lessons of what not to do. And there's where you want to learn, as opposed to the person who, and I lovingly, and I say this favorably, I call them educated idiots. They have all of the book information that they can spew back at you, but zero execution and implementation skills. They don't know how to execute. They don't know how to implement any of the stuff. They just learned it in a book, or they attended some class, and now I'm a coach, and all they're doing really is making money off of coaching and not really delivering the kind of service they could be by learning how to do it themselves first and then do it. So, the old cliche of those who can't teach, that's wrong. The best teachers and the best mentors are those who have done it and can prove it.
Got it. No, I, again, can relate to that. I've definitely come across many people who will teach you all the theory, but as soon as you ask them a practical question, they just look at you with a blank look, or they'll regurgitate some case study that they've read about. And you're like, yeah, but that's okay, but you weren't there. So where's the example of you having been through that and walked the walk, right? So absolutely.
Exactly right, man.